The Umpire Inspire podcast is all about the stories, all about the journeys, and all about the heart of being an umpire. I'm your host, Jason Becker. Hi everyone, Jason here. Thank you very much for checking out the show today. It's a fun one today, part 2 of my conversation with Dale Scott. So hey, before we get rolling, I wanted to mention over at umpireinspire.com, you can check out the 3 and 2 Bulletin. That is a free weekly email newsletter that I send out to subscribers. It is 3 bits of umpire news and 2 bits of umpire inspiration that I collect for you every week. Just a little something to keep you encouraged, keep you inspired, and just like the podcast itself, to celebrate all the good people out there that are doing what we do. So today's show, part 2 of my conversation with Dale Scott. I know you're going to enjoy it. We talk about the one thing that surprised Dale most about becoming a big league umpire. We talk about his approach as a crew chief. We discuss his plate stance, which I've always found very interesting. If you ever watched Dale work or have seen video of his games, you know that he had a very athletic plate stance. He always was just like raring to go. Actually, almost always is a better way to say it, because it didn't start out that way, and he'll explain how that stance transformed for him early in his career. And then we conclude the show with some listener questions that some of you in the Umpire Inspire audience suggested, and Dale and I have some fun with that. So without further ado, please enjoy part 2 of my conversation with Dale Scott. So Dale, I'd like to ask you some questions about your big league career. 30 plus years, nearly 4,000 games. There's a lot of material there. So appreciate everything that you're offering to us today. It's so cool to listen to some of the tales and some of the lessons. Let's start with this. You know, you come up through the system, you get that full-time call in 1986, you put some years under your belt. How was serving as a big league umpire different than you expected back then? What were some of the things that surprised you?
Well, just the when I got to the big leagues, it was the intensity. This how scrutinized everything is.
Okay.
And you know, you can explain to a guy in AAA that, you know, might be going up or something. Hey, there's, you know, so the media is different. I mean, you know, the everything is under a spotlight. You know, blah 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 blah. And oh yeah, I know, it's going to be different. Yeah, it's going. Well, until you get out there and actually, you know, experience it, it's really tough to prepare for that. You know, I mean, it's a day in and day out fishbowl that isn't just a fishbowl with the fans that are at the game and the two teams. It's a fishbowl that is national and sometimes worldwide, believe it or not. So I guess I knew that was going to happen, but I had no idea how intense it really was. And that was a real learning experience for me.
How would your peers have described you as a crewmate?
Well, I'll tell you how I when I became crew chief, I tell you how I hoped guys would respond to me, and that's the fact that you know, my philosophy as a crew chief and as a partner is, you know, not to be overbearing, not to have a bunch of rules, not to have you know, all these strict ways of doing things. I was very much more laid back. I would address things if they needed to be addressed. I would try to lead by example. I didn't necessarily have to lead by you know, giving them a page full of do's and don'ts. And a couple of the biggest compliments I ever got. I got hurt 3 years ago in this month. April of 2017 was my last game, April 14th in Toronto. And that fall, in June, I signed off with the league, and I knew I would be retiring at the end of that year officially. And that November, I went up to an umpire's wedding up in the Seattle area. And there was obviously a bunch of umpires that were attending the wedding. And I had an individual at different times during that evening. I had three guys, all three were up and down umpire, AAA umpires that I worked quite a bit with throughout the last few years, when they would come up and down. And all three basically said, when we would get a call to go up, they would tell you what crew chief you're going to, and if like a buddy and I would both get a call, I would text it, hey, I'm going up. Who you going up with? And they would say, well, who you going up with? Well, I'm going to join Scott. Oh, you lucky.
Aha, nice.
What they were saying to me is, we really appreciate. Some guys would come up from AAA and would have different philosophy from a crew chief that's a little bit more stricter, a little bit more. It doesn't necessarily put the guys at ease that much.
Oh, okay.
You got to remember when you're coming up from AAA. I mean, you're going sometimes to new cities. You're maybe teams you haven't seen. Maybe you're working with some umpires you've never umpired before.
Yeah.
Worked with. You're doing logistics, getting from wherever to New York, wherever you're going. The last thing in my mind, this guy needs is for kind of an overbearing crew chief. Hey, well, this is what we do, and I do, blah, 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 and just all this stuff that puts a couple more layers of pressure on this guy that's got enough as it is. I would welcome the guy. I would say, hey, you have any questions? This is our rotation. A lot of times, Danny Osonia, who I worked with for 10 years, would be my right hand man that would kind of do the logistics for them or whatever. But my point was, I wanted them to relax as much as possible. They don't need me or my crew adding layers of other stuff that they've already are dealing with. And so on that wedding that fall, I had three different guys at three different times basically say the same thing: was thank you for how, the way you ran your crew, the way you made us feel welcome, the way you made us feel at ease as much as we could in that situation. We really, really appreciate it. That's something as a crew chief, that's one of the best compliments I ever had in my career when guys would say that, because that's exactly what I was trying to portray.
That must have made you feel great.
It made me feel unbelievably great. It really does.
I'd like to work on your crew. That's the kind of leader that I respond to as well. Would you say that attitude is the norm for crew chiefs in the bigs these days, or is there still a contingent that keeps things in order, stricter, or by the book?
I think it's the stricter by the book umpire, so to speak, is just a few.
Okay.
And again, I'm not blasting their. I'm not saying how they do their crew is wrong. I'm just saying I'm certainly not of that ilk. I have a different thought process.
Yeah.
My two main crew chiefs in my big league career, my first several years was Rich Garcia, and then before I became a crew chief for about 4 or 5 years, I worked in the late '90s with Dave Phillips. Two completely different crew chief philosophies, two outstanding umpires, two great careers, but two completely different thoughts on crew chiefing. So Richie was much more, very businesslike and focused. Not that he couldn't have fun, don't get me wrong, but especially about a half hour before game time, the TV went off, and everybody get your, let's think about what we got to do in this
okay.
net. And like I said, a great umpire. Davey, much more loose in the locker room, much more. He always said, I want to have three guys I'm working with that we laugh and have a good time, because we have enough stuff going on out on the field that we don't need to be all stressed out and tensed up because of stuff we're talking about in the locker room all the time. So, and not that Garcia did that, but my point is this: I had two different philosophies. I tried to blend the best that I thought of both of them into who I was as a crew chief. And hopefully I was successful at doing that.
There's substance and style. The needle can point in one direction or the other, but you can still be a huge success as an umpire or as a professional in anything you do. In our last episode of the show, I spoke with a friend of mine named Daniel Mills. He's a local amateur softball umpire here in Washington State. And one of the things he discussed is, well, in that show, we talked a lot about the balance between having fun on the field and doing your job. And if you're only doing one of those two things, then you're not doing it right. And so you need a balance. And he said he doesn't even really want to talk with his partner during a game. Now we're talking more specifically about a little league field where things are a little more flexible. But he doesn't even really want to talk to his partner because he wants to go to work. And so his needle points just a little bit in the doing his job direction. But he's a fantastic umpire. And somebody might misinterpret that as saying, this guy's standoffish. This guy, is so strict on the field. Like, what's he doing? How come he's not having any fun? He's having a blast, but his needle points just a little bit towards go to work.
Right.
But both ways are effective. Both ways are very professional. And both ways can get the job done.
Well, exactly. And in arguments, there's several ways to deal with the situation. And my way may be completely different than the way you do it.
Yeah.
But both ways, if they are successful in doing what you want to do, which is to tone everything down and give everybody, calm down and hopefully get them back heading to their dugouts and not have to eject, because it's easy to eject. We can eject anybody, but it's doing the right things and saying the right things and having the right temperament and demeanor to, hopefully keep guys in the game. But you may do it completely different than I do. Doesn't make yours right or wrong or mine right or wrong. The goal is the goal. And so, if you can make that goal with different philosophies or different ways of doing things, more power to you.
So Dale, I have one more very specific question about your experience in the bigs. Your plate stance, okay? As far as I can tell, super athletic, super demanding.
Right.
Physically. And I love it. How did you pull that off for 30 years?
Well, it's funny. Certainly in AA and all in AAA, I was working on my knee. And that was all the rage back in the 80s.
Okay.
I don't recommend it to anybody, and rightfully so. But back then, again, things changed, and that was kind of what was happening. Well, when I got to the big leagues, my first year of the big leagues in '86, I had an okay year, a rookie year. My second year, my sophomore year, I was flat out horrible. I struggled. My confidence was shot. No one was believing me. I wasn't believing me. It was just one of those things that snowballed. And Marty Springstead, and earlier you had said who's been important in your career. Marty Springstead. It was Dick Nelson early. It was Marty Springstead when I got to the big leagues. Marty called me. Well, it's a long story, but he basically said we need to change things. We got to get you off your knee.
Okay.
And so I went to Instructional League that year down in Sarasota, where Marty lived, for a week, just to work on different stances to find something else that I liked. And that's basically the birth of, after my second year in the big leagues, the birth of my 30-year stance. And it's all leg. You say it's athletic. It's all legs. You got to use your legs. You can't be bending your back.
I can see that.
Yeah. And that's because your legs are much stronger than your back. Your legs, are going to be able to go up and down for all those innings and that type of thing. And so, that was how that whole stance came about. And then I just kind of fine tuned my strike mechanic a little bit, my strike three, and there you have it.
Very cool. I love it. I love how athletic your stance looked back behind the plate. And, I just didn't know how you kept that up for 30 years. So I was very curious about that answer.
Well, luckily this is a podcast, and you don't see how unathletic I look right
now. Hey, you earned it, brother. Come on. Okay, so Dale, I would like to ask you about your second act, so to speak, post-retirement. What do you want your second act to look like? I think I kind of have an idea on this because I've learned and seen that you are active in umpire training, and you're visible, I guess. You make yourself available to shows like this one or stories in Referee Magazine, like I just saw last week, things like that. So what does your post-retirement life look like for you? What are some of your goals?
Well, it's funny. I after the 2017 season, when I barely had a season, I was hurt in my fifth game. Um, the rest of that year, that was, I was paid the rest of the year. It was like I was on staff the rest of the year. And then it hit me in, January 1st, 2018. I'm retired. I'm not getting that check anymore.
Yeah.
And you're definitely out. And I was kind of, I guess, naive from the standpoint. I just didn't think, I thought, I'll just, umpire will just, wander off into the sunset and there you go. But I had several opportunities, phone calls, messages, people getting a hold of me in different parts, all around the country, if I'd be interested in helping, speak to an organization or to help with a camp or a clinic or those types of things. And I guess stupid me, I just didn't think of that, quite frankly. I just didn't think that you would be approached as much as I was. Some things didn't work out. They didn't have the budget to fly me cross country or whatever the deal was. But it really helped me the last couple of years to stay involved with umpiring. I truly believe that I had a very blessed, I'm very thankful for the career I had. I started when I was 15 in Eugene, Oregon. I went to umpire school and got a job when I was 21. I was in the big leagues at 26, and I have nothing to complain about. But I truly believe you have to remember where you came from and to try to give back as much as you can. And that's basically. I enjoy doing that. It's not like it's a chore, but I do think it's the right thing to do. And as long as there are organizations or people that would still like to hear something I have to say, I will be happy to try to help out that way. And so I'm enjoying that. It's not obviously it's not like a baseball schedule where you're gone all the time, because I did that for a way long time. But you're still traveling a little bit here, getting out a little bit here, getting out a little bit here. I think Mike is probably thrilled I'm doing that.
Yeah.
But I enjoy doing it. I enjoy helping out, giving back a little bit. And as long as people are interested in me doing that, I will do that.
Well, you've got a lot to give, my friend, even in just a 45-minute conversation like this one. So keep it coming, okay? Keep it coming. On behalf of all of us who enjoy umpiring and like to hear about what it's all about and be encouraged by guys like you, man, keep it all coming.
I appreciate that.
So, Dale, earlier this week, I put out a call to some of the folks that are following Umpire Inspire on Facebook, and I let them know that I had a special edition of the podcast coming up. And if they had an opportunity, hypothetically speaking, if they had an opportunity to ask a recently retired big league umpire a question, what would they like to know? So I had 4 people chime in, and I was wondering if I could just rapid fire a couple questions for you to finish off here today.
Sure.
Okay, so first one, Dale, comes from a gentleman named Chris Eckstrom. And Chris would like to ask you, what are 1 or 2 things you loved about being a big league umpire? And specifically things that you personally will never forget, but that most common folk wouldn't recognize. Maybe something that flew a little bit under the radar to the normal human eye, but something that just meant an awful lot to you as a big league umpire.
Well, throughout my career, I had opportunities to meet people and do things that the only reason I had that opportunity is because I was an umpire. Mm-hmm. For example, with the charity that we have, Umps Care, which we did these children hospital visits. Those were so heart-wrenching, but so special. And the chance to see the kids, see their parents and grandparents, to light up and maybe for just a while not think about what's going on in their lives. But that was the only reason I had that opportunity, and I was able to do that numerous times, was because of baseball and umpiring. But even non-organized things like that, just meeting people randomly that somehow they found out you were an umpire or whatever, and making a kid's face light up because you gave him a baseball, or you're on you're sitting at a restaurant having lunch or something, and somebody strike up a conversation, whatever it is. But you really, it was so fun to give people. People love baseball, and when they get a chance, that random chance to talk to, an umpire, first of all, they don't, unless you are an umpire, you don't really normally think of that. And second of all, it was just really, one of the fun things I used to like to do, like I was getting on the elevator at the hotel to meet my crew to go to a game, and I'll get on the elevator and there'll be a family, with a couple of kids, and they're all dressed up in whatever home team that is or whatever. And I'll say, of course, they have no idea who I am. And I'll say, "Well, wow, looks like you're all set for tonight's game, huh?" And, "Oh yeah, we're excited. We love the Phillies or whatever." I said, "Really?" I said, "Do you already have tickets?" Well, yeah, we have. We're sitting. So I'll tell you what, if you'd like, I can put your tickets right behind home plate. And they'll look at me.
That's great.
Yeah. And I'll say, yeah. So I introduce who I am. I say, I get their name, and and it's just, I don't know. It's just fun to see them light up like that. Like that was the coolest thing that ever happened to them.
Small moments like that. I love it, Dale. That's great.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And then I would also do it conversely after a game as I'm going up the elevator. They obviously came from the game. I'll say, "Oh, who won?" And they'll say whatever, and I'll say, how was that umpire behind the plate? Oh, well, there's that one call. To go, "Oh, I know."
Yeah, I remember. I was there.
Yeah, exactly.
You're right, Dale. Baseball is very special. One of the things I love best is seeing some of the big league players have a catch with a kid in warm-ups.
Yeah.
Seeing Mike Trout throw a ball, seeing Aaron Judge throw a ball to a kid out in left field or right field, wherever he's warming up. And that kid's life is made, right?
Well, absolutely. When I was a kid growing up in Eugene, I would go to Eugene Emerald games. They were AAA at the time, and get autographs if a player tossed me a baseball. I mean, that was gold. That was a gold brick coming my way.
That's right. That's right. Okay, so question number 2. Jimmy Barnes would like to know, what are 1 or 2 historic baseball moments that you've been on the field for?
Oh man, yeah. I've been on the field for 4 no-hitters. I've been on the field for 15 World Series games. I was in St. Louis on the left field line when the Red Sox won Game 4, swept the Cardinals, and won for the first time in 86 years.
Broke the curse.
Yeah. And I got a lot of friends in the Boston area and stuff, and they live and breathe and die, those Red Sox. So the only thing that would have been maybe more fun if that had happened in Boston instead of St. Louis. But of course, on the other hand, traffic wasn't bad that night. But I've seen so many things. I've seen individual performances that are remarkable. I've seen historic games. There's so many. I have personal moments. I remember, obviously, my first game, my first playoff game, my first World Series game. Those types of things. But baseball, the thing that's so wild, and when you walk out on the field, and this is really with any sports official, but as a baseball umpire, when you walk on the field, and you've been doing this for years and years and years, I've been 3,000 games, blah blah blah. You still have no idea what's going to happen that night. You could have a perfect game. You could have a 14-0 lead in the 8th inning, and they come back and win. You could. And now, is that probable? No, but you could have it, and you have no idea what is going to happen. And even though it's almost, and I don't want to say routine, but you've been doing this for so long, and it's another game and another day at the office. Now let's play ball. Boom. You have no clue what may occur that evening, and that's one of the challenges of being an official and being an umpire, and that's one of the joys to be a part of that. And it's just it's a remarkable type of situation where people say, well, they work in an office where they're bored with their job. Well, if you went every day not having any clue what might happen,
there you go.
It might perk you up a little bit. But yeah, it's just it's been a remarkable run, and I've seen just a ton of things.
Very good. Another fan named Mark Oda would like to know. Okay, so now Dale, keeping in mind that this is a family-friendly podcast, His question is, what was the best line you ever heard from a manager?
Well, let me think.
I know this is tough, right?
Tito, manager when he was managing the Red Sox.
Tito Francona.
We had Francona, right? He came out and we had a crew consultation, and this was before replay, okay?
Okay.
And we got a crew. It was a catch, no catch in the outfield, and
okay.
It went against him, and he came out, and I said, all right, Tito, we'll talk. So we got together, and so we didn't change it, and he goes, why? And I said, Tito, we did everything right. We blah blah blah. We did this. We talked about. We did this, and this. And he goes, yes, you did everything right. You did talk to you. You did get together. You just got the blah 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 play wrong. And it was hilarious. We almost started laughing because he was so frustrated. And he goes, oh yeah, you did everything right. Everything was right.
You're thinking this is going well, and then suddenly it wasn't.
Yeah, I figured there was a catch there somewhere, but
yeah.
Yeah, it was one of those times where you try not to laugh on the field, and then when you get in the locker room, we just burst and we're going, oh my god, that was hilarious.
That's great. So finally, this question is from Margaret Carter. Margaret would like to know, Dale, what are you most proud of from your Major League Baseball career?
Probably just my longevity. Be able to work. I was 103 games short of 4,000, and quite frankly, I guess it's ironic I say longevity because I was going to break the 4,000 games in September that year if I had stayed healthy, but concussions had a different thought process.
Yeah.
But be able to do this day in and day out, and the travel that's involved, and the sacrifices of being away at times it can be really tough at times, and the grueling schedule. I mean, just to do that for 32 years and another 5 years in the minor leagues. I'm very proud of that, and I'm very proud. I've been lucky; my body's held out, except for the concussions. But I haven't had any knee or hip or neck issues or any of that stuff that could have crippled my career much earlier or shortened it or whatever. But I'm just proud of the entire body of work, and I feel just very privileged to have been able to do that.
Very well said, Dale. Well, hey man, we're wrapping it up here, and I just can't thank you enough for your time. You've been very generous to communicate with me these past few weeks, and agreed to coming on the show and sharing a little bit of your experience and your insight and advice with a show like ours and with a guy like me. And, you just mentioned being a kid and having an autographed ball thrown at you from a minor leaguer in Eugene, Oregon. And that was a gold brick to you, right?
Yeah.
And, I mean, look, having this conversation with you today for a guy like me, for an amateur umpire who has a passion for what he's doing and just is very interested in helping others find that same passion, man, this has been gold for me personally. So I really want to thank you so much. And next time I swing through your hometown, I'm gonna buy you a beer somewhere. What do you think?
Well, I think that would be great, Jason. Hey, listen, I really appreciate the invite. I was glad to do it, and anytime, please get a hold of me. But I wish you the best of luck with this. I think it's you're onto something that's I think a really good thing. And so best of luck as you go forward.
Thank you, Dale. I appreciate that.
You bet.
It's been fun, man. Take care. I'll talk soon.
Take care.
I've said it before, and it's worth saying again. It is so cool how a major league veteran like Dale and an amateur umpire like me can get together in a parking lot, over a beer, over Skype, wherever it happens to be, and just talk shop. That's one of the many things that makes being an umpire very special. I think you'll agree that umpiring is one of the crafts, I should say, that is so dependent on that mentor role. Our success depends so much on the people who have gone before us and have stuck around to show us the way. And Dale is certainly one of those people. I can't thank him enough not only for being on this show, but for everything he does for the umpire community. So thank you very much again for listening. I'm so glad to hear that so many umpires are enjoying the show. Umpire Inspire is for you. And please do share it with your umpire friends that you think might like to listen. The two best ways to do that are probably to head on over to the website, umpireinspire.com, or to share it on Facebook. Take very good care of yourselves and your families, and I will see you next week on the Umpire Inspire podcast.